So if you have a square root of something, you have a square root of a number, and you want to square that whole thing, can someone tell me what happens? When you have a square root of something and you square it, what happens? Okay, it cancels out, and what's left over? 17, right? You just remove the square root. That's all you do. Okay? So, let's say you have radical 23 and you square it. What is that?
23.
Just 23. Easy, right?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Now, let's say you have a number with a square root, a number that's not under the radical, and a number that is under the radical. When you square that, yes, you do multiply it, but the first step is to square each one individually. So the 3 gets squared. The 3 gets squared, and also the radical 7 gets squared. And those are going to be multiplied by each other. So what's 3 squared?
9.
Very good. That's 9. What's radical 7 squared? 7. Very good. And 9 times 7?
9 times 7 is 63.
63. Good job. Good job. Everyone see that? All right, you guys try 5 radical 3, please. All right, so Caleb, what did you do, please?
Parentheses 5 squared, and then parentheses, what's that thing called?
Radical?
Radical 3.
Okay.
And then after that,
What goes here?
squared.
Squared. So Caleb took each term and squared each one individually. All right, go ahead, Caleb.
All right, so 5 squared is 25, and then radical 3 is 3, and then we do 25 times 3, and we do 75, right?
Very good. Radical 3 squared, you just remove the square root. And then 25 times 3 is just 75. All right, everybody okay on that? All right. Okay, so these are the formulas we'll be using today. I posted this. And these are to determine, given the 3 side lengths of a triangle, what kind of triangle it is. All right? So if the longest side is always C. If C squared equals A squared plus B squared, that's a right triangle. If C squared is less than A squared plus B squared, it's an acute triangle. And if C squared is greater than A squared plus B squared, it's an obtuse triangle. Who can tell me what is an acute angle and an obtuse angle, please? All right, one at a time. You're acute. Go ahead. Tell me acute. How small? Less than? Not quite. Less than? What's a right angle? 90. So acute is less than 90. Obtuse is greater than 90. Okay. So those are my formulas for today. Okay, so the reason why these formulas work. Let's say you start with a right triangle. Okay, we said the most common right triangle is a 3, 4, 5. All right. So which one is the hypotenuse? 5, right? Across from the right angle, that's your hypotenuse. All right, so we're going to start with a right triangle, and then let's say you increase the hypotenuse. You increase the 5, right? The right angle is going to become obtuse. So if you look at the new triangle that I made, instead of a hypotenuse of 5, I made it 5.5. I made it longer. Okay? And what happens when you make the hypotenuse longer, this angle gets bigger. And so now this angle is now obtuse. It's going to be greater than 90. Okay, so that's why if the c squared is greater than a squared plus b squared, it makes the angle bigger, and now it's obtuse. Now it's an obtuse triangle. All right, and if you take the original hypotenuse of 5 and you decrease the hypotenuse, the right angle becomes acute. Okay, so the original hypotenuse was 5. I made it 4.5. And as a result, since I made the side length shorter, the angle got smaller. And now that angle is acute, or less than 90. So now it's an acute triangle. All right, when you start with a right triangle, the other two angles are already acute. All right, they're already less than 90. So here, obtuse triangle, it just has one obtuse angle. And an acute triangle, it actually has 3 acute angles. But the point is, if you make the hypotenuse shorter, the angle, the right angle, becomes smaller, and it's going to be acute instead of right. All right, on to the examples. These are similar to the problems on the worksheet. Okay, these are not on the worksheet. We want to look at these triangles and determine if they are acute, right, or obtuse. God bless you. All right. So, well, we don't know yet. Since we have a drawing, we already know which side is the longest. But I like to start out every problem by squaring each side, because we're going to have to do that anyway. So I'm going to square each side first. Okay, so I'm going to start with a 9 squared. And we know 9 times 9 is 81. Then I'm going to do a 15 squared. 15 times 15 is 225. And then I'm going to do 3 radical 34 squared. Yes.
I forgot, what did you square it?
We're starting by squaring each side. All right, so 3 radical 34 squared. All right. So you guys told me before, you square each one individually. So the 3 gets squared. Good. But also, the radical 34 gets squared. Okay, very good. The 3 squared is a 9. The radical 34 squared is just 34. And 9 times 34, you say 306? That sounds correct. Okay. Now, after you square each one, you have to decide which one is going to be c squared. Out of the 81 and the 225 and the 306, which number is the greatest? The 306. So the greatest number has to be the one that you use for c squared. Okay? A squared and b squared, it doesn't matter which is which, but the greatest has to be your c squared. Okay? And what I like to do is to make a little chart, or a little table, I should say. So on my table, what I do c squared on the left, and I make like a T table. Yes, a squared plus b squared on the right. Okay, so we already squared each one. We don't have to do that. So we said the 306 is c squared. So under c squared, I'm going to write 306. And for a squared plus b squared, that's going to be 81 plus 225. All right, so all we have to do is 81 plus 225. And that's 306. All right, so 306 equals 306. So that means c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And what kind of triangle is that when they are equal?
Right.
That's a right triangle. Very good. Yes. All right, that's a right triangle. All right, so that's really all you have to do. All right, so why don't you guys try part B real quick? Are you still copying that? I'm recording it, so if you guys miss anything, it's there. All right. So let's see. Maybe I can think of a better one. Why don't you guys try number 1 here, acute, right, or obtuse? So what you're going to do, these are the warm-ups. All right, what you're going to do is square each side first. So what you're going to do is 4 squared and 4 radical 3 squared and 8 squared. Square each one, and whichever number is the greatest, that's your c squared, and then do c squared versus a squared plus b squared. Please try it. All right, 4 squared is 16. 4 radical 3 squared is going to be 4 squared times radical 3 squared. Okay, 4 times 4 is 16, and Caleb says radical 3 squared is just 3. And what's 16 times 3? 48, thank you. And 8 squared is 64. All right, so we have 16, we have 48, and we have 64. Which one is the greatest? So which one is c squared? Very good. 64 is going to be c squared.
A squared is 16 plus 48, which equals 64. That means it's
very good. A squared and b squared, it doesn't matter which is which. All right, let's see if I have room here for my little chart.
Wait, so this is all we get to do today?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
C squared versus a squared plus b squared. All right, I was hoping to get a different answer here, but I guess not. C squared is 64. 16 plus 48 over here. Okay, and this one is 64. Okay, so again, this one turns out to be a right triangle since 64 equals 64. But just remember, for the inequality, whatever number is less, the inequality is going to point to that side. Okay, so if the c squared is less, the arrow points to the c squared and it would be acute. If the a squared plus b squared is less, the arrow points to the right and it's going to be obtuse. All right, then you can start. All right, one more. So here's the side lengths. This one's easier. This one's easier because there's no radicals. All right, 26 squared, 22 squared, and 14 squared. All right, so I need a calculator for this. Okay, 676, thank you. 22 squared is 484. And 14 squared. Okay, 196.
Alright, so the C squared is 676, and the A plus B is 44 to 190.
Okay, Caleb says 676 is the greatest, so that's your C squared. The other two sides or numbers, it doesn't matter which is A squared or B squared.
It doesn't equal it.
Okay,
It's not equal.
let's go to the table. Let's make a T table, C squared versus A squared plus B squared, right? All right, C squared is 676. 484 is A squared. And then 196 is B squared. We're going to add those two. 680.
So it's obtuse, right?
All right, so the 676 is less than 680. So the inequality arrow points to the less than side. And that was your C squared, so that means your C squared is less than A squared plus B squared.
I thought that.
No. Wait.
And then Caleb tells me when C squared is less than A squared plus B squared, it's a cube. What's your question? The acute is when the C squared is less than. When the C squared is greater than, it's obtuse. When they're equal, it's a right.
Don't worry.
Number one, C squared equals A squared plus B squared.